You're listening to Search the Scriptures Daily, a program in which we encourage everyone who desires to know God's truth to look to God's Word for all that is essential for salvation and living one's life in a way that is pleasing to Him. Our topic is psychology in the church, and today we're going to discuss the relationship between psychotherapeutic or psychological counseling concepts and Eastern religions. Now, Dave, that might sound like a stretch, to some who are listening or watching our program, but that observation is hardly unique to biblical Christians like us who are critical of psychotherapy. In fact, it's almost common knowledge among the researchers as well as many of the practitioners. But before we get to that, a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing the DSM, that is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the latest version, which includes around 370 some mental disorders, for those who are not familiar with the DSM, it's the handbook used by nearly all psychotherapists for the purposes of recognizing the symptoms of certain disorders, and then because a disorder is listed in the DSM, then that then becomes a basis for billing a counselee's insurance company. So it has some practical value for them.
Sure.
There are 374 alleged mental disorders that are included in the DSM, and they're there on the basis of rigorous science. No, Dave, as you know, a vote. One such disorder, which we talked about, ODD, odd, right? That's oppositional defiant disorder, which is defined as, I'm quoting, hostile behavior toward authority figures. The symptoms include losing one's temper. Now, Dave, see if you fit into any of this, or if you've had any children that fit into this. Losing one's temper, arguing with adults, deliberately doing things that will annoy other people. I have 5 children. The boys annoy the girls? No, they never did that, Dave. Or blaming others for his or her own mistakes or misbehavior.
Now, Tom, before you get into that, when you mention a vote, it's not a unanimous vote. Sometimes it's pretty close as to whether it falls into the category of mental disorder or not. This is not science.
No.
They should understand.
And in this day of political correctness, it just shows you how weak and how absurd that really is.
And they should understand that there are, several hundred psychotherapeutic techniques, many of which conflict with the others.
Yeah, there's 500 different approaches, more than 10,000 variations on that, techniques and so on.
So the psychiatrist or the psychologist, they do not agree with one another. So take your pick. You want a heart transplant, or would you like your kidney transplanted? Which do you want? Let's vote on it. It's like a cafeteria.
Dave, the reason I'm going back to the DSM, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and if anybody's interested in hearing what we had to say about it, which we document, they can go to our website and listen to those programs, which are archived. The reason I wanted to go back to that is you made a statement a couple of weeks ago about psychology and religion, some spiritual ideas. You talked about transpersonal psychology, which mostly has to do with the spiritual realm. And you asked the question, what do they learn in school about spirituality? Well, let me quote to you from the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, under the section called Other Conditions That May Be a Focus of Clinical Attention. It's code V62.89, and it has to do with religious or spiritual problem. That's the way it's identified. Examples include distressing experiences that involve loss or questioning of faith, problems associated with conversion to a new faith, or questioning of spiritual values.
Tom, let me interrupt again.
No, don't. You pick it up right from there. What do these guys know about spirituality? What did they learn about spirituality?
Most of them are atheists.
Yeah.
If you want to take a poll, now they're going to advise you. It's like the people who counsel you on dying. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in an afterlife.
Well, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. would be a name.
Yes, I had a little debate with her of sorts on TV. She was very unhappy with me. She said she would not want me to counsel any of the dying because I was a fundamentalist. I said Jesus Christ is the only way, and she really had nothing to offer. She was a psychotherapist, psychiatrist.
Dave, let me qualify one thing that you said. You said most of them are atheists. Well, like a Buddhist is an atheist. I mean, in other words, many of them, most of them, you'd say, well, they're atheists, but most of them really are New Agers, which we're going to get into, the whole thrust of psychotherapy toward Eastern mysticism. But she had seances at her ashram, her retreat center down in San Diego. They were investigated by the district attorney down of San Diego.
Of course. And Tom, when you say New Agers, a New Ager says, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Mm-hmm. What they mean is they want to be, space cadets out there somewhere being spiritual, hugging trees or who knows what, but no rules, no doctrine. And, of course, Paul told Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 4, the day will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. And unfortunately, it's not even endured in many churches today. Doctrine is boring. Let's get into something a little more.
Psychotherapy is all based on feelings, how you feel about something. So you certainly wouldn't want rules with regard to feelings, because my feelings may be offended by the rules.
The AHP, Tom, Association for Humanistic Psychology. Now, if anyone wants to check up on this, why don't you go back and look at the schedule of speakers and workshops for some of their past or present conventions. Mm-hmm. I don't think I ever told this story. See, I've been writing about this, talking about it for years, and here was a couple. They've got a ministry. I won't name them. And they lived in the Indianapolis area, and they're not quite sure that I might be exaggerating. So they went to a convention being held in Indianapolis, and they haven't registered, they haven't paid anything, but they're picking up free literature. And then some people are filing into a room, so they just decide to follow them. And they go in there, and everybody thinks they're part of the crowd. And, well, what are they going to do? They're making little animal masks. I'm not kidding you. Now, these are PhDs. These are medical doctors and professors. They're making some of them want to be a cat or a mouse or, a falcon or whatever. And so they go right along with it. They pretend like they're drawing a face too, and that they're going to put this on, hold it in front of themselves. And then they start going around the room. Oh, they lower the lights. Now, Tom, this is the Association for Humanistic Psychology, mm-hmm. and they are really into religion, all mm-hmm. right? They even have seances at some of these. Well, this was getting into a seance. And here's, I just came from the North Pole. I'm very cold up there, but I'm feeling much better down here. Some little bird from this lady is... it's speaking through her now, she thinks. They're channeling mm-hmm. these animals. And they go around the room, and these people are getting rather uncomfortable. It's getting weirder and weirder. And then it comes to them. Well, the husband is a bit of he's not quite as bold. The wife is very bold. And she stands up in the middle of the room. And she starts reciting John 3:16. Wow, did that agitate these animals? They just had it's getting really wild in there, and the snake is hissing at them and sticking out its tongue and so forth. And the husband says, let's get out of here. Now, Tom, I'm not kidding. This is Association for Humanistic Psychology, mm-hmm. one of their conventions, okay, and a workshop with PhDs, medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists.
Dave, you remind me of Jean Houston. I mean, so you have a workshop here, but we have a woman who is gathering together some of the leaders in Washington and taking them through this same kind of process.
Well, she's got them on the ground pretending to be different animals, and they're going back and they're not just regressing into the human past, but back into animal. When they were animals, they're going back in their memory. And Tom, in Washington, D.C., politicians seriously doing this. But the Bible, no, we couldn't go for that.
Right. Well, Dave, I started out by saying we're going to look at the relationship between.
Let me interrupt you again,
Sure.
Tom, because I know what some people are thinking out there. I'm not psychic, but I know what they're thinking out there. Well, what is this?
We get enough letters to know
Right.
what people are thinking.
Right.
Good.
Well, what does this have to do with Christian psychology? We don't have Christians going into that stuff. Well, how do you peel this off of psychology? This is what psychology is. This is where it came from. Let me remind our listeners again, go into any library, look in the index of any psychology textbook or reference manual. You will not find a reference for Christian psychology. Why? Because there's no Christian who's the founder of a school of psychology known as Christian psychology. So what is Christian psychology? What are they trying to do? They're trying to integrate. They've gone to the wisdom of the world, the godless anti-Christians, in fact, and we could name them, we won't do that. And then they're trying to take something out of that to improve the Bible, because, of course, the Bible doesn't have all we need for our modern problems and how to counsel people and so forth. Tom, it's wicked.
So, whatever comes along, those who are trying to integrate, they call themselves Christian psychologists, psychotherapists, whatever comes along, they are attempting to integrate that into their belief system. And they say, well, we're biblical, but this other thing we feel is helpful, and so on. Now, I started out by talking about the connection between psychology and Eastern mysticism. Dave, what you described, this story that you gave of these people, they observed it personally. We've been writing about it, talking about it. We have observed these things personally, so it's our observation. But wait a minute, we may have a bias here, and maybe our listeners or viewers are saying, well, come on, you guys, let's give some objective input here. I'm going to quote psychologist Daniel Goleman, Goleman. He's writing in Christianity Today. He says, Eastern philosophies seem to be making gradual headway in the West as psychologies, not as religion. Let me give you another one. This is San Francisco State University professor of philosophy Jacob Needleman, who is a consultant, very bright guy, a consultant to the field of psychology. He wrote, a large and growing number of psychotherapists are now convinced that the Eastern religions offer an understanding of the mind far more complete than anything yet envisioned by Western science. At the same time, the leaders of the new religions themselves, the numerous gurus and spiritual teachers now in the West, are reformulating and adapting the traditional systems according to the language and atmosphere of modern psychology. These are not Bible believers, not fundamentalists, okay?
Give us the quote from Lawrence LeShan, who was, at one time, was the president, and I think he had that office when he made this statement, was the president of the Association for Humanistic Psychology, the AHP.
He explains, the basic model of man that led to the development of Eastern meditational techniques is the same model that led to humanistic psychotherapy. You didn't say that, Dave. I didn't say that, but we can see it. What does it take to understand that? By looking at, as you mentioned, there are 10,000 techniques. Many of them are so religious, so Eastern mystical, it just makes your hair stand on end, if you had some hair.
So, but the person who's listening says, yeah, but I wouldn't go to those kind of people. Oh. Well, but this is all part of the same bag. How would you distinguish? I mean, and why would you distinguish? Because they're following the same rules. They took the same tests.
Mm-hmm.
They took the same courses. They had to give the same answers to get their license. They have a license as psychotherapists or psychiatrists from the state, whatever state you live in, and then you find some of this a bit weird. Where does it come from? It doesn't come from outer space. It comes from psychology itself, exactly as Lawrence LeSean said.
Mm-hmm. Dave, you wrote a book, Yoga and the Body of Christ. Why did you write that book? Except that Christians, by the hundreds, by the thousands, not only are getting into yoga, we now have dozens of books on Christian yoga. So what's the point I'm making here? If somebody says, well, I'd never go to a psychotherapist who taught Eastern beliefs and so on, yet, on the other hand, Christians by the hundreds, by the thousands, are being led to or going to Christian, so-called Christian yoga.
Tom, let me go back a few years. I can't even remember how many years, but it's got to be at least 30, because this has been going on for a long time now. Mm-hmm. And I had helped Ravi Maharaj write a book, The Death of a Guru. He was a guru one time, worshipped as God, who became a Christian. It's the only guru that I ever heard of who became a Christian, okay? And we had originally given that book to a secular publisher because we wanted to get this message out into the secular world. And they got bought out by, anyway, it ended up in the hands of the Sunday School Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, Southern Baptist Church. Sunday School Board, probably most people never heard of that, but anyway, they publish a lot of books. And I was to have a meeting with one of the bigwigs there. I had never met them before, and now they've got this book. I went to Nashville. I went to the, high-rise building, quite impressive headquarters. And then, what do you know? They've got a huge Christian bookstore right out there along with the offices. So I went in there to see what there might be. Of course, I was looking to see Death of a Guru, surely. I mean, this is their book. It's the only a testimony you've got of a former guru. They would surely have that. I couldn't find it. I did find Everyday Yoga for Christians. I did find a few books like that. But the testimony of a former guru who will tell you what is wrong with this, no, it wasn't on the shelf. So I'm just kind of playing dumb, which I am anyway. I could do it really well. And I said, I was looking for a book called Death of a Guru. Do you think you might be able to find a copy of that? I mean, find out who the publisher is and so forth so that I could order a copy. And so the manager dug around in a catalog of books in print, and she came back to me rather surprised. She said, well, that's one of our books. Now, Tom, we took it away from them. I mean, what is the point? They got all kinds of books by pastors telling their testimony, but nothing that really would meet the need. So anyway, that's the situation, Tom.
Dave, as you've been really refreshing your mind, we're working on a book. I'll tell our audience we're working on a book, putting together a collection of our articles, things that you've written, that I've written on psychology. And, it was interesting for me to go back over the years of writing about these things and, just having it brought to mind again. And I wonder, as you've been going through the articles that you've written, even material that you've taken from some of your books where you've written about psychology, has anything hit you that, you hadn't thought about in a while with regard to this subject?
Well, probably a lot of things, but exactly what. Well, Tom, the main thing would be is that this hasn't gotten better; it's gotten worse. Mm-hmm. It has gotten a stronger grip on the church. I don't remember whether we mentioned this, but it was Norman Vincent Peale who brought this in.
Yeah.
And he's had, I think we did mention it, Smiley Blanton,
A psychiatrist.
in the basement of his church there in New York. It was withstood, and I can give you the quote and the reference, by his biographer, who said it was withstood by the entire Christian church for, well, he said 70 years. I don't think it was withstood that long, but decades. Now imagine, you know who Norman Vincent Peale is. Norman Vincent Peale on national television said, it's not necessary to be born again. You've got your way to God. I've got my way. I found eternal peace in a Shinto shrine and so forth. And he's the one who brought psychology, Christian psychology, into the church, and the entire evangelical church was against it for decades. Mm-hmm. Today, they're all for it.
Let me add something about Norman Vincent Peale's background. You read a biography of him, and you find that he has more to do with religious science, with mind science,
of course,
than with anything biblical. Yet he was Guidepost magazine. You're talking millions. The readership of that, millions per year, even today.
Tom, it's a little frustrating and almost discouraging, but we just trust the Lord. His publications, his monthly publications, his various magazines, he's got several of them out there, still going after his death, I think to about 16 million readers a month. That's 4 times as many readers as have, well, I don't know how many readers have read it, 4 times as many copies as all of my books put together over a period of 20-some years. So here we are, we're like a mosquito on an elephant, but we have to keep doing it. And Tom, as you know, we get so many letters of encouragement from people who have been delivered from this sort of thing through what we have written.